clarify your remarks on the Alex Pretti killing. Are you saying that the Justice Department has opened a civil rights investigation into his death?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, look, I know there's been a lot of discussion among the media around that, but just think about what that means. All that means is that DHS, as the Secretary has said, is conducting an investigation, as they should and as they do every time there's a tragic event like this. And the FBI, in their role, which is a separate role from DHS, is also looking into it and conducting an investigation. And that's not. That shouldn't be treated as making news. We've said that for a week, and it remains as true today as it was last Sunday when I said it.
Two questions for you, one on topic and one separate.
Speak up a little bit.
Yeah, two questions for you, one on topic and one separate. On topic, do you have any information that you could just share, because 3 million documents is a lot for people who are watching this at home? Are there any new names or new people, public people in positions of power who your department found in these filings?
I don't have anything to share about what's new or not new, and no, I don't have anything to share about that.
And to follow up on that, do you have a reaction to the arrest of Don Lemon overnight?
Do you have a reaction to what?
To Don Lemon's arrest overnight?
Do I have a reaction to it? I don't know what that means. What are you looking for me to do? Jump up and down? No, I don't have a reaction to it. I don't know that the charges are unsealed yet. So I can't. I'm not going to comment on that.
Thank you. You said this is the end of the Epstein, of your review of the Epstein files. So just to clarify, is the public going to learn the identities of the men who abused the girls with the information that you're releasing? And if not, why not? And then I have a quick follow-up.
I mean, you just baked in an assumption into your question that I have never said and I don't know to be true. Is the public going to learn about men that abused these girls? Like, what does that mean? I mean, I don't understand what that means.
Well, I mean, they're the men who abused the young women through Epstein's.
Look, we said in July, and it remains as true today as it was in July. If we had information, we meaning the Department of Justice, about men who abused women, we would prosecute them, right? We talked about the work that we're doing. That's why I said that. I said this earlier. There's this built-in assumption that somehow there's this hidden tranche of information of men that we know about that we're covering up or that we're choosing not to prosecute. That is not the case. I don't know whether there are men out there that abuse these women. If we learn about information and evidence that allows us to prosecute them, you better believe we will. But I don't think that the public or you all are going to uncover men within the Epstein files that abuse women, unfortunately.
Okay, and just to follow up on the investigation into Federal Chairman Jerome Powell, is the Justice Department, what's the status of that investigation? Now that President Trump has nominated a new Fed chair, is the Justice Department looking to bring a close to the investigation into Chairman Powell as soon as possible?
I don't have a comment on that, on the subpoenas that were issued. I don't think the timing of President Trump's decision to nominate somebody is a controlling factor in any investigation.
Hi, I just wanted to follow up on Alana's question. So you're saying that the shooting investigation of Alex Pretti is now a civil rights investigation. You're implying that that's always been the case. Can you also say what about the shooting of Renee Good? I mean, why not is that a civil rights investigation?
I didn't say it was always the case. I said it's the same thing that we said as of last Sunday, as with respect to last weekend. There are thousands, unfortunately, of law enforcement events every year where somebody is shot. The Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice does not investigate every one of those shootings. There has to be circumstances or facts, or maybe unknown facts, but certainly circumstances that warrant an investigation. So when I talked about last weekend, and when others have talked about this week, the fact that President Trump has said repeatedly, of course this is something we're going to investigate, that's what I meant about what we're doing. It doesn't mean that every time that there's a federal officer-related shooting, that's something civil rights takes up. It depends on the circumstances.
Follow up on that, can you
Go
just,
ahead.
I know you can't be specific about details of the investigation, but can you kind of just characterize the scope of the Pretti investigation, what kinds of things that they'll be looking for, and who will be involved?
Well, I mean, it's an investigation, so what do we think we're looking at? We're looking at everything that would get shed light on what happened that day and in the days and weeks leading up to what happened. And that's like any investigation that the Department of Justice and the FBI does every day. It means we're looking at videos, talking to witnesses, trying to understand what happened. I mean, you're talking about an incredibly tragic morning, and then trying to unwind and investigate that it takes a lot of time. I'm not going to prejudice what they're doing or not doing by laying any markers, but I expect that the folks that are doing this are the most experienced in this space and are doing that.
Yeah, so to follow up on that, how would a civil rights investigation work with DHS taking the lead, which is what was said over the weekend? And are prosecutors in Minnesota, I mean, who is involved in this? We know that there's a lot of frustration within the department, both in Minnesota and the Civil Rights Division, that they feel they are not being brought in and they are the experts here. So just to follow up, how would this work with DHS taking the lead, and who is from DOJ involved in this investigation?
I don't think that, look, I think anytime every single federal agency, including DHS, has a process that they use when there's something like this that happens, an internal review, investigation, however you want to call it. That's what DHS was doing, as they do every single time something like this happened. There was nothing unique to these facts. There might have been outsized focus on it because of what happened, but DHS was doing an investigation. I don't know that will stop. I don't expect that investigation to stop because we're investigating, and of course we're coordinating with them. We're not working against them, but there's I suppose potentially separate goals or potential goals in the two investigations. I mean, DHS is conducting an investigation, and then the FBI conducts an investigation. It's not as if one goes one way and one goes the other, but they are their own investigations.
Very clearly said on Sunday that HSI is leading the investigation. He did not want to overstep and say anything. Was that not true anymore, or was that true at the time?
I don't think it's fair to say whether it's true anymore, okay? And I don't think it's also, I don't want to say who's lead or not lead. I don't even really know what that means in the course of an investigation. The FBI is investigating. They are for sure coordinating with Secretary Noem and her folks as well. And I expect DHS is also continuing their investigation to some extent. And there's outside folks on this. This happens, like I said, thousands of times a year. And it is tragic every single time it happens. And it's tragic this time like it's tragic every other time. And so there's a process that has to be allowed to play out internally with these law enforcement organizations and certainly with the FBI as well to allow this investigation to go on.
You've talked about the expectations surrounding the Epstein files. Do you agree that the DOJ itself, senior officials at the DOJ, played up those expectations for the first half of this year? I'm just sort of trying to understand what responsibility does the Justice Department have for the criticism that has come over the handling of the Epstein files?
I'm not commenting on criticism. People can criticize all they want. My point was just to make plain that when it comes to what we've been doing the past 2 months and why we weren't able to complete the review of over 6 million pages. Okay, so you're talking about 2 Eiffel Towers, okay, of pages in 30 days in a way that made sure we complied with the act, right? So the act had multiple requirements. Get it done in 30 days, and you better not release any victim information. All right, so there's a lot of statutory construction, there's a lot of case law that exists that says that if those two are in conflict, we obviously are not violating the 30-day requirement by taking our time to comply with the act. And so my comments were directed at this idea that because we didn't review the 6+ million pages within 30 days, somehow the Attorney General doesn't care about victims or is further doing damage to victims because of that, because exactly the opposite is true when it comes to the Attorney General.
Sir, I have questions on Epstein and Minnesota. First on Minnesota. For transparency, would you commit to releasing the body cam video from federal officers that was involved in that shooting and their names at a point when the investigation can allow that? Will you make that public? And I did not hear clarity on whether Renee Good's case is also in the civil rights realm.
I'm not committing to anything with respect to that investigation. That would be completely unfair to the investigation itself for me to stand here and commit to something for any reason. It depends. It depends on what happens with the investigation, and that's a decision that was made by the folks that are working the investigation. As it relates to Ms. Good, I don't, like I said before, there's investigations that happen all the time with respect to shootings like what happened last Saturday, and cases are handled differently by this department depending on the circumstances.
On Epstein, sir, if I may just ask one on that, please. You mentioned a letter to Congress. How and to whom did you notify the White House about the production that you're announcing today before you came out and spoke to us?
How did I do what?
Notify the White House. What was your interface with the White House? You said there's a letter to Congress. Who did you update at the White House about this?
Well, I don't know. I don't really understand the question. You mean who did I update?
Did you provide them an explanation of what today's release would be?
Look, my team has certain communications with the White House. Let me just be clear. They had nothing to do with this review. They had no oversight over this review. They did not tell this department how to do our review, what to look for, what to redact, what to not redact. They absolutely knew that I was doing this press conference today and that we were releasing the materials today. But there's no oversight by the White House into the process that we've undertaken over the past 60 days.
I wanted to ask a question about the evidence in the Alex Pretti investigation. Early on, our reporting showed that the only type of evidence that the FBI initially had in its possession that it was